Okay, the battery's hooked up. Everything's hooked up. Let's see. Please start up and run. Please. Hi everyone, I'm Ferd and welcome to my video. This video is kind of a continuation of one that I had done prior to it with this Trailblazer Welder Generator. And the first video, I put a new switch in it, a new fuel pump. I was dealing with a few problems with it. They're not running at all. And I come to find out there was a lot of water in the gas tank. Once I did get this thing running, it was surging pretty bad, so that had to be fixed. With a generator like this, you can't have it the RPM surging up and down, and you'll get information on why that's important later on in this video. But we're going to take care of this thing, tear it down, do a valve job on it, and get it running good. So now, if you've watched my other videos, you'll see that I'm kind of big on the reverse engineering. I usually show these things when they're already disassembled, and I kind of doing the same thing here. Here's a quick time lapse of me tearing this thing down. But you'll see more important things putting it back together, and just keep in mind that this thing comes apart the same way as you put it back together, but just in reverse. Okay, I want to clarify something here. In this next shot, you're going to see me spin the exhaust valve around with my thumb. This one here is solid. Some people may notice, well, the piston isn't up on top dead center. Well, the piston is on its way down from the compression stroke. Both of these valves should be locked in, and then you'll see a little bit later on in this video when I turn the motor that after it goes down and it starts its way back up, you'll see the exhaust valve then open. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in that top dead center position to be able to test these things. You just have to know where it's at in its stroke. Okay, got the head off of this side, and that one's good. And this one here that should be like it. So it's probably out of adjustment. And that's most likely my difference in compression right there. The other side looks real good. Put my thumb on there. I can't turn either one of those. So those are tight. I mean, everything's good on this side, and I knew that going in. We'll get everything cleaned up. Tomorrow I'll get my parts, and hopefully I can start putting this thing back together. My exhaust valves were beat up pretty bad. So I don't know if I got a picture of it before, but I took them down to the machine shop and had them reface them. They didn't want to charge me nothing, but I gave the guy 10 bucks, told him to go buy some donuts with it. But anyway, I've got everything on this side cleaned up, and the valves are lapped, and I'm ready to put them back in. And the little setup you got is you got your valve, the spring, there's a cap, and then you've got the two little clips that go on each side of it that get locked in down inside of that. And then I'll show you here in a little bit when I go to adjust them a little more about it. So I'm gonna get these springs back in it and then get them adjusted down. Now I don't have a good way to mount this camera, but what I'm doing here, I got my spring, got my cap and a little cap that goes on top of the valve on there. It's going to go down in here. There's an adjuster on the front of this lifter right here. I've turned that in to give me some clearance, and then I'm gonna press everything right down in there like that. Okay, my valve, I'm gonna go ahead and put it in. And then we'll push it all the way up in there. There it went. Now I'm going to put my spring compressor on there. And you can see I've got it just past the three little notches in the valve. These are cone shaped. I'm gonna put the smaller end of the cone down, and I'm gonna have to do this without holding the camera. I'm gonna need both fingers, but you get the idea. You're gonna get both of them around there, and then I'm gonna let the tension off the spring, and it's gonna compress these two inside that top cap, and then the valve is in there. On this particular generator, you'll find a tag on the side of it, and it actually gives you the valve clearances right here. It has all kinds of specs for this engine. So take a look at yours, and they all should be pretty much the same. But this one here is 5 thousandths on the intake and 13 thousandths on the exhaust. And it specifies cold. So what you need to do to adjust these, if I can get a light, you need a 9/16 opened end and a 7/16 opened end also. But if you can see right down there, you've got your let me see if I can hold this thing. 7/16 here, and then back here on the lifter, you can see where you can put your 9/16 opened in on that. Hold that, and then you either tighten or loosen the 7/16 to either widen or close the gap on your valve clearance. Make sure the valve's in the closed position, and you can use the top dead center thing if you want to go that route. But I'm just going to turn them till they close completely, and then set the gap on it. So let me get that done. Before I put those heads back on it, I want to close up the top of it here, get my grease off of there. And because how rough the surfaces are where these gaskets go on the top, I'm going to use some good old Permatex #2, because they're kind of rough. Somebody's been in here before and they've went really crazy with a wire brush or something, and they've kind of beat things up a little bit. I'm just going to do it on this surface here. And when you're doing this with using this stuff, I'm old school. I mean, I grew up using Permatex, and I'm kind of like hooked to it. And there are some good places to use it, and this would be one of them right here. But if you're using it, you want to put a glove on, apply it with your finger. You just need a little thin coat of it, because this stuff, it gets on your finger. It's hard to get off. I'm going to do these two center ones here first, and then I'm going to, when I put the intake on it, I'm going to do those two. And it's not too hard to get off, just so long as it ain't on there for 20 years. It says non-hardening, but I think it does over the course of time. So just hope that you're not the one peeling that gasket off of here 20 years from now. You should have gotten 3 gaskets like this one right here. You're going to use one of them on this side here, and then the other side, there's 2 pieces to it, and there's going to be 2 of these gaskets that go into that one. You go ahead and lay that in there real fast. Okay, I got that lined up. Now what I want to do next, I got some don't lose that. I got some RTV sealant, and I'm just going to put a little bit around the top of this thing like that. That's a little too much, but that's what squeezed out the bottle, because this will leak. And then you got a little washer that goes on there. That was their solution to keep the oil from coming out through that. But we're going to take care of it with that RTV, and we'll just tighten that thing down. Okay, on your second one, you've got 3 pieces here. You got your little reeve valve. You got a washer. You got a spring. You got your gasket. We'll go ahead and sit that down in there like that. Then we have another gasket. It's going to go on top of that one. And then you've got your vent. Go A little bit of silicone on there. The bolt's going to go right down through the middle of that screen. And I'm just going to look down in there and make sure that everything's still seated okay and it looks good. So I'm ready to tighten this down. And just crank it down till it's tight. Don't overdo it. Okay, with the intake manifold, you want to put your carburetor on it first. The bolts, when you took it apart, if you remember, they come up through the bottom. So I'm gonna bolt this down real fast. I got a new gasket over there, and then we can mount this on there. Okay, now there's only bolts on there one way, so make sure when you put your carburetor on there. All right, let's put this thing on there. And if I remember, all right, this has all been cleaned off. The head's been cleaned, gaskets off of it. There was a lot of whining and crying on the reviews about that gasket set, especially the head gaskets not lining up, and I don't see nothing wrong with any of it. I think a lot of times people order stuff for the wrong engine or something. I don't know. These are all the same size, so you don't have to worry about any long ones or short ones or anything like that. Now when I torque these down, I'll start from the middle and then work my way to the top and the bottom. Now this is the tool they used back in the day. Now people use an impact wrench, an electric cordless. I still like using this thing. It's a lot of fun. A lot of miles on this thing. And it's probably the only thing Craftsman I've ever bought that's never broke. Put that on the other side. And I'm getting real close. Okay, I'm going to go 20 foot-pounds. Start in the middle. As you can see, they're moving a little bit, so you always want to go back over them a couple times. Okay, I'm going to bump it up to 20. Okay, I'm going to go around and check them all one more time, just to make sure. And then after this thing warms up, cools down, I'll come back and check it again. Moving right along. Okay, I'm ready to fire this thing up, see if it's going to run. For me, this is always the scary part. But we'll see. Here we go. There's no fuel in the carburetor, so this might take a minute. All right, this sounds real good. It's still not idling. That may be an electrical issue, but it's running at 3,900 RPMs all the time. And that's too fast. I think it should be 36. So I need to slow that down and then find out what's wrong here, that when I flip the switch it's not going into idle. Now what you're looking at here is the idle solenoid, similar to the one that's on this machine, and that's kind of where my problems were coming from. These will vary from model to model, so yours may look a little bit different than this one, but they all basically do the same thing. Now, the rod that you see here at the bottom goes into this hole. This is a coil. And when you run 12 volts across the two connectors, it magnetizes it and it pulls this rod in. And that puts your carburetor in an idle position. In this case, it's 2,200 RPMs. And then when the 12 volts is absent from that, then the carburetor runs and it governs at around 3,600 RPMs. Now, the problem I was having on this one, on the solenoid up here, I didn't have to buy a new one. As you can see, the rod was rusted up pretty bad. And I cleaned that up. There was some screws missing that mounted it to its bracket. Searched and searched, but I did find some that would fit it. And the thing was actually kind of in an angle, and the rod was jamming, going in and out of it. There are adjustments on it. Find out in your instructions on your machine what the adjustments are and the procedures, and follow them, because this is real important for it. And that was pretty much all that was wrong with mine. But other than that, these connectors down here on the end of the pigtails, you can see were dry rotted. I had to replace that. Sort of took care of my big problem that I was having with it as far as it not idling. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the RPMs are critical on this particular machine. Being it's a generator, you'll see on the engine, it tells you power, 3,700 RPMs at 60 Hertz. Now, this is critical because if you raise or you lower the RPMs on this generator, you're going to change the Hertz in its rotation. That's how many times per second that the generator is actually rotating to make AC power. That's a completely different topic, and I'm not going to go into it. So if you're running this thing at like 3,500 RPMs, your probably going to be at like 50 hertz. If you do the math, 60 hertz a second, actual power or RPMs that you would be looking for would be 3,600. But this is the recommendation because the machine will fluctuate up and down a little bit. If you're off 1 or 2 hertz, it's not going to matter that much. But they're the engineers and they're the ones that came up with this number. So 3,700. If not, you're taking the possibility of hurting up some of your tools. If you've got power tools that you plug into it, or a refrigerator at the house that you're wanting to run off of it, you're taking a great chance of causing some damage by this thing not putting out the correct type of electricity for it. So keep that in mind. It's critical. The idle is at 2,200, and you should be able to achieve that by adjusting the solenoid on it. And there, if I can't remember right, but there's an adjustment also on the governor assembly on it as well. So find your instructions for your particular machine when you're adjusting these things on it and follow them to a T. Other than that, I mean, the machine runs fine now. It's back at the shop. It's back up on the crane. It's welding signs up on the highways again, and should be a few years before I look at this thing again, unless they get some water in it. It is out on the back of a truck and it gets rained on. So, well, this is by far one of the biggest, longest videos that I've put on YouTube. And if you've made it this far through it, thank you for watching. And I hope that you found some information in there to help you out, whether it's with one of these or with something similar to it. And also hit that like and subscribe button. I got lots of videos coming up. Hit the notification bell to see whenever I put those up there. And also, for all you guys that are working on one of these, have fun.